Hi, Keep Singing members, and hello, Terry. Yay, Terry's here. Okay, it is March 5th, 2024, and we're going to continue building on what the unit that we worked on in February. So don't worry about it, even if you're still catching up, don't worry about it. You'll be gathering all these principles and kind of synthesizing them as you go along. And that is typically not going to be a problem for most people. So like take it in and it'll probably make some things make sense from our breath support um, unit. And this is going to work us into phonation and breath support and how they go together. So there is a beautiful dance between the laryngeal muscles and the laryngeal function and the diaphragm, and that is part of the autonomic system. We don't have to control it really. Now, I say that, let me give that a caveat already. We when we're just normally function and we're talking, um, as long as you're talking healthfully, typically you don't have to think at all about how you speak, and a lot of times even how you sing. Typically, you're gonna sing fairly okay. The issues arise when a person is um, singing in such a way that they're trying to produce sounds that they're not warmed enough to make, that they're not skilled enough to do, or to provide volume or power that they don't know how to do besides just pushing more air. And so that's just technique and just learning technique. It's a skill. Anybody can learn them. One of the, you see people all the time. Well, I don't know if you get the commercials on YouTube um, that, that I do. There's one guy, can't remember his name. He's credible. It's great. It's a great guy. And his thing is, oh, the big secret of voice lessons you don't, or, singing is that you don't have to be born with talent. You can develop the skills. And that is absolutely true, 100%. There are only, of the hundreds of students I've taught one-on-one over the last 25 years, I have only had two that I had to let go, so to speak. There was one guy who wanted so badly to sing professionally, and I tried every trick in the book. I consulted people that I knew, and tried to help him as much as I could. Um, and I eventually said, you know what? I'm going to have to send you to an ENT because you can't hear what I'm doing and you can't tell where we're going with the pitch, and I can't help you, and I'm not going to keep taking your money. So I want you to go make sure that there's nothing, no disconnect happening neurologically, and that's really that was the saddest scenario. Like somebody just completely couldn't help. Um, the other was somebody who was a similar situation, but just really wouldn't do any effort. The first guy was doing everything, doing all the things, everything I asked above and beyond, and could not make headway. And we tried for a year. So I was like, there's something going on. There's something that there's an impasse somewhere, a blockage. So all right, but pretty much everybody can improve. Like there, I am convinced that there was something going on neurologically with that guy, or even perhaps physically. Don't know because I never heard from him again. So sadly, I really should pick back up on him. He was a wonderful guy. We had a great relationship, and it was one of those things. Just didn't. I checked in with him like 6 months later, but never heard back. So hopefully he has found his solutions, and maybe he's found someone who was able to help him. Maybe there was some rehab involved. I don't know. So, but that's just me being honest. And but by and large, if people have all their processes functioning normally, healthfully, if there's no ill health, if there's no neurological disconnect or something, typically people can do their singing and their speaking without having to think too much about it. Now, I've already given you my caveats. Okay, so there's ways that you cannot help yourself, and that you can um, overblow, that you can strain your laryngeal muscles, that you can cause damage. We hear about it all the time. We hear about famous people, Adele and Grant. I mean, almost name them. I mean, pretty much everybody in the last 15 years has had microsurgery. Anybody who's performing microsurgery or has done vocal rehab, and because they didn't realize that they just got famous quickly, and the demands on their voice were more than they were ready for, and anymore the singing that people are creating these days. I mean, it's so powerful and expressive and complex. So a lot of people don't have the technique to support that, even the people who are writing the songs and performing them. So that is why they then, when somebody, says to them, hey, you got to stop, usually their manager will get a vocal coach for them, and or two or three. So depending on the funds available. So anyways, we're going to learn some things to give you a foundation where hopefully you will not ever have that. You're going to have some foundational things, knowledge and skills in place, so that you don't do the damage in the first place. I already told my story about how I went to go see the laryngologist, so I'm not going to tell it again. That's going to be in a past video. And we have already done in last month's lessons, we did the anatomy of the respiratory system. So we did that, and we did the basic cause and effect of an inhale, and then the cause and effect of an exhale. And there is a specific cause and effect pattern that happens for each one. I won't go over it again, although we will see some of the anatomy today as we talk about vocal production and then the airflow that makes it all happen. So let's do it. Let's jump in. I'm going to share my screen. Just share the whole desktop. Here we go. All right. Come here. All right. Can you see it, Terry? Okay, but I'm going to blow up pictures, so don't worry about trying to strain your eyes to see stuff. Let's start with the brief review of the inhale and the position of the rib cage. All right. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing that way, and I'm going to share it on the picture. Okay, so this is taken from Seth Riggs' Singing for the Stars. He was one of the first popular singers. He worked with opera, classical, which is the basics for opera, pop, rock. He was Michael Jackson's vocal coach, traveled with Michael Jackson for a year and was on retainer. He's literally worked with everybody, but really in the like for about 4 decades. And he's not as well known anymore among young people, because his proteges have kind of taken his stuff, and because it's so foundational. It's all based on bel canto, which I've also discussed previously, but means beautiful singing, and is kind of the Italian standard for classical singing. And but like I said, clearly Michael Jackson was not singing classical, but all the foundation of what Seth Riggs teaches is based on that, and based on the latest of what he had anyway. There's only one thing that I can really update from his, so he was really, this is good stuff. But it was based on when this was published like 30 years ago or something. It was based on all the latest research and anatomical awareness, etc. And I'll update you on what the only other update is. So we get a signal from the brain. This brain says we need to breathe. The diaphragm, it signals the diaphragm to contract. The diaphragm lowers. The lungs are then able to expand. That creates a vacuum that pulls the air in. So we have our little air flowing in. There's two things that he is showing that I didn't go into too much, although when I did my little my little map not drawn to scale demonstration last month in the last unit, this is so he's adding in here that when we breathe, not only does the diaphragm contract and lower, but that the rib cage also expands a bit, and the muscles, he calls them the rib muscles, the muscles that help the rib cage expansion that's involved in breathing are called the intercostal muscles. We have two sets of them. Some are exterior and some are interior, and they let the ribs do this. And so the ribs kind of go out, and if you just sit and quietly breathe for a minute, my head in this picture, and you feel not only your belly come out, which is a result of displacement from the diaphragm going down. It's not that you're breathing down here. You're not belly breathing. You're not breathing with your belly. Everything below your diaphragm is being displaced, so your belly comes out. But you'll also feel your ribs just slightly going in and out. When you do an inhale, they'll slightly go out. When the air goes out, you'll feel them slightly go in. So I'm going to have you do that on your own because I got a lot to cover. So spend some time just thinking about that and doing it, feeling it. So that is your inhale, all right? And we'll get to more of how we're going to see that in just a second, how that's helpful. Let me share the screen for the exhale, right? So we get a signal from brain that the diaphragm releases, and let me do this. Let me just show the difference here. I'll pull these side by side, right? So you should be able to see the air going in, and you can see the way he's drawn it is that the diaphragm has lowered a bit. So you can see it here from the xiphoid process that sticks out down here. And then over here, the diaphragm has relaxed and gone back to its upside down bowl shape, or, I use the toilet plunger image. Not very delectable thought, but it's functional. So the diaphragm goes back up, smushes the lungs, and the air goes out. I mean, that is the order in which things happen. And when the air goes out, the rib cage kind of goes back in. All right, now let's talk about phonation. Let me get rid of these and get up my phonation stuff here. This is a song from last night, still up. All right, I want you all to see the larynx and where it sits. Okay, there we go. Get you over here. Okay, so let's talk about vocal cords. And so now that is the only update that I'm going to give you today. That when anybody who has known anything about vocal cords, people know that their vocal cords produce the sound. They don't usually know exactly how it happens. You're going to know exactly how it happens, exactly what happens. But the thing to know is it's not just the vocal cords involved. All right, so the vocal cords are here. You have the edge of the vocal fold. So these are the whole things out here. It's kind of like accordion-esque. I don't know, it's not really an accordion, but they kind of fold out and hide. The thing that I'm thinking of is like in your great-grandmother's living room, and those folding accordion wall room separators that go in and out like that. or something. Okay, so but that's what the vocal folds do, and we'll discuss that more in just a moment. But I want you to see where everything is. So we have the root of the tongue back here. We have the trachea coming up. This is like you're looking down the hole of in between the vocal cords. And the epiglottis back there. All right, now, so we're looking down. And so the trachea doesn't lie like this under the the larynx. It's really like this. Okay, so this is the trachea coming up like this, and the larynx sits on top of it. So hopefully that makes more sense. So what I was going to tell you is those edges of the vocal folds are what's called the vocal cords. But they are, and people have thought, like if you've even gone this far at all, you think of the vocal cords as vibrating against each other. And we're going to talk about that too. But they don't really just do this. They really go like this. They oscillate. So, and then the vocal cords would be up here at the top point of that oscillation. So, but there's muscle and cartilage that's involved in the entire process like this. Okay, so now I just want you to know that, just kind of tuck that away. All right, so over here we have our larynx. So let's talk about where the larynx actually sits. It sits at the top of the trachea, as we've already talked about. Do know too that the esophagus is back here behind the larynx. And some of you who are in medical fields, hopefully you're gonna know this, but most of us average schmucks don't. Okay, so we just marvel and wonder that we don't choke every time we eat. And when we do choke, we say it went down the wrong pipe, but we don't know exactly what that means. So now you're gonna know. So your larynx sits atop the trachea, and one of its functions, it's not just for speaking and not just for singing, one of its functions is to close up when you swallow so that no foreign particles will go into your lungs, because if you do that, you get aspiratory pneumonia and you could die. So you don't want that. So the vocal folds close and the food goes down the esophagus. That's how, think like a pinball machine, and the ball, goes this way and not that way because the levers you control. So the larynx is kind of like a lever that way. So the food goes behind the larynx and into the esophagus. So that's just your trivia for the day. The other function of the larynx, besides the closing up that and preventing foreign particles from coming in, and besides the speaking and singing, is also for exertion. So if you ever notice when you pick up something heavy and you go, or whatever, or if you're, going to the bathroom and you go, that's your larynx. That's a bearing down, and that larynx gives you that little bit of extra strength. The larynx closes off and it creates like a closed system and gives you just that little bit of extra strength for lifting or exerting in whatever way. So that's just kind of, again, more fun little trivia, but the larynx is a super amazingly critical piece of our body that most of us average people don't know anything about, or know very little about, or know only what somebody told me as it came through somebody else and blah blah blah. So it'll be nice for you to know exactly what's happening and where it's happening and why it's happening. So if we took the larynx that's up here and we set it horizontally across the top of the trachea, then you would have an idea of where it all sits. This over here on the bottom right is the front view, as it says. The thyroid gland is going to be in front of that and kind of surrounding that. So if you know where your thyroid is, you know where your larynx is. It's right behind that. And again, there's your trachea going down, but your vocal folds then, as it says here, they sit inside the larynx, or they live inside the larynx. Now, as you can remember your great grandmother's accordion room divider, or your church fellowship hall's room divider. When you are just breathing, your vocal folds are like, really, this is a better way to think about it. Your vocal folds are at rest this way. They're, but on top of the trachea. They're just at rest. And then only when one of those functions comes up do the laryngeal muscles pull the folds together, close off the larynx to do, and close off the passageway. They close off the airway to do whatever it is they're going to do. One of those three functions: exertion, swallowing, or phonation. So it pulls them across like that. So now let's talk about as the air is coming up. Let me get rid of this one and pull up this one. Woo, that's big. Hold on. Okay, so this, you're gonna have, those brain teaser pictures that you look at, and one way it's a skull, and the other way you look at it, it's a woman sitting there at her vanity. Like, this is kind of like that. It took me like a minute when I first got this book a long time ago. I was like, what the what? So this, he's pointing here, these are the vocal cords, all right? And here are the rest of the vocal cord structure. And then the trachea pipe is coming up this way. So all these dots, that's supposed to be air particles. So here is what happens to create a sound wave. Okay, just one sound wave. Your vocal folds, your brain sends a signal autonomically. You don't have to think about that. Oh, come on. We have 10 minutes left, man. So I can probably do this in 10 minutes. I'll try anyway. So your vocal folds pull together. The diaphragm starts sending up air. It knows how much air you need to do this, and because it does it all day long. And the dark area is a buildup of air pressure. So you have these air molecules building up underneath the closed vocal folds. And then when just enough pressure builds up to create whatever frequency it is that the brain has said, to create just the right amount of numbers of times that the vocal fold is going to be doing this, it'll let it burst through. And it bursts through in a little, let me get this out. Boom. Okay, a lot of pictures today. So here we have the compressed air, because it's been building up. Now this is all happening in milliseconds, right? So this is, you have to kind of work with me here. We're expanding this in time. The air bursts through, and so you have this wave of compressed air that then works its way around your body in a process called resonation, which we'll talk about in a future lesson. And we end up with, ooh, it's upside down. Hold on. Okay. Let me just do the whole desktop, get rid of you, and turn this. Okay, so we have all these, here it is, they're happening, all that little compressed air burst through, compressed air burst through, compressed air burst through. That's all happening right here. And then these rings are meant to represent sound waves. And then they go into the listener's ear and vibrates the ear drum and registers signals to the brain, which then interprets it as voice, or as a human voice, as opposed to something else, which I think is completely amazing and miraculous. And I get very preachy about this. I think it's so amazing. The whole thing is so complex and ridiculously amazing that I just, wow, it's so cool. So that is how the human voice is created. You have this, um, the, the buildup of air particles, air molecules below the closed vocal folds, and then the burst through and compressed air. And this is, like I said, happening so fast that it's barely captured by stroboscope. And but it can be just like the fastest stroboscopes. I have a scope of my own throat from when I had to go last fall and my vocal fold function. Um, and it's amazing to watch it, but you cannot see it with the human eye. It's so fast. So, but that's all going on all at the same time. Now, our next project is going to be to learn um, how do we um, take that knowledge of what is happening there and support it with our breath support. And in a way, and I say this over and over and over again with my private students, I'm going to say it over and over and over again with you guys. Your job is to support the larynx. Your job is to let the larynx do what it does without hindering it and helping it. Like we try to help by like controlling airflow from here. You're only going to make the larynx work harder. Um, you're not going to help it by pushing more air to get louder. That's only going to make it have to clamp down harder and work harder to do its job. So that's how damage occurs, right? It's like when you think of yourself like when you were in high school or college and you were screaming at the game and you're sending so much air and you eventually end up with inflamed, you didn't know it, you were just hoarse and you were kind of proud of it at the time. You were like thinking you were super cool. And, but you know, your vocal folds didn't think that was too cool, but that just, you caused them to be irritated and inflamed, and it took a day or two to come back to normalcy. Um, so, but that's kind of an exaggerated example of what people do when they sing with bad air technique and with bad breath control, and they're just pushing, pushing, pushing. So we're going to go back and you're going to learn, if you haven't been doing them already, you're going to start doing your breathing exercise number 1. Then you're going to do breathing exercise number 2. Then you're going to do breathing exercise number 3, and you're not going to do them out of that order. You're going to do them in that order so that your brain and body have time to apprehend what is going on. That's what number 1 is about. What is going on here? When you do the physical actions, you feel the air flow in, you feel the air flow out. That's number 1. And you have to realize you can hold that air in and not die. And that you're going to realize the day when you are holding it in by your rib cage expansion and not by holding your breath from here. Which is that exertion thing. Like when you were a kid, you drive by a cemetery or under a bridge or through a tunnel, and everybody goes, "Everybody hold your breath," and you all go, and you'd close off your larynx. So that is not how we want to hold our rib. Like we want to hold our breath in support of our laryngeal function by the use and expansion of our rib cage and the use of our diaphragm. We support the diaphragm's work by kind of getting these muscles out of the way, not interfering. So your job is to let the larynx do its job, and you're going to build your muscles here so that you can do that. And that's exercise number 2 and 3. But 2 has to come first, or you're going to die when you get to 3. So you do 1, that's a lot of mental and some physical. Number 2, a lot of physical, and then that's the first time you isolate the diaphragmatic movement to take breath. The third one is when you apply phonation. So we're producing sound, counting our numbers to on a sustained pitch with our rib cage expansion and not letting your rib cage fall, at least trying not to. So I think I'm going to lose you here in just a minute. So shoot me any questions at Q&A at keep-singing.com. Anything that you're like, what? I was so confused by that. Or any other thing that you want clarification on. And know that we're going to do a bit more on the whole phonation process, well, a fair amount more, to talk about resonance. So if you're, I didn't even really get into like how pitched singing happens here, but there's so much to learn, so little time. But you can, we're going to talk about phonation and how that creates your voice, and that it's not just here, it's all of here. So, all right, Terry, do you have a question or a comment?
No, but helpful. I do have some anatomy experience, so it's a good review.
Good. Yeah. So hopefully this reinforced and didn't contradict.
No, it reinforces. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just a reminder of the ribs. That's your support system there, rather than clenching here. Because I've noticed that when I am nervous or this gets tight, and then I can't sing.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
Terry, great observation. And that's that you can undo that with training. And the 3 breathing exercises will really support you in that. And especially by the time you get to number 3, you'll be, producing sound and doing all this support, and you'll begin to see the balance between muscle and laryngeal function. So the muscular support and the laryngeal function. So which was